All right, it's 8 p.m. on January 13th, 2025. Welcome to Scouching Live. I of course am Will, the host of the show. I am joined by friend of the show, friend of the channel, friend of all of us, Mr. Tony Ferrari, in his brand new home. Tony, how's homeowner life? How's your life? What's going on? It's been a little while. How you been?
Home ownership is wonderful. I love
Isn't
all the
it?
projects I get to do. I love all the new bills. It's a wonderful experience.
You got to
I,
deal
I
with the
recommend everyone
bank.
go into massive debt for
Yeah, it's a
it.
worthwhile investment, especially in this country. But welcome to the show. We're gonna have a good one. Of course, AJ is also here producing the show. He's
Hey,
around somewhere. There he is.
hopefully my mic
Uh,
sounds better this
yeah,
time.
we've played around with the levels a little bit. Hopefully, it's a little bit better. So let us know. We'll continue to tinker, but it seems to be a bit better off nowadays. Anyway, so great show tonight. We got all kinds of stuff on the docket. We are going to talk a lot about the Columbus Blue Jackets, what's been going on with them, and the hotness of that team, and just how hot they've been and why. I also want to give a quick shout out to the women's under 18 team from Canada. They pulled it off, gold medal victory over the States. I watched that game. It was a damn good time. Chloe Primerano rocks. There's like 3 or 4 people on that team. I would highly recommend checking it out if you can. What else is going on today? I mean, we're going to talk about where Tony and I have gone in the scouting world in the last month or so, some of the ups and downs of what we've done. But I also, first of all, before we get into the Columbus Blue Jackets, I have a special surprise. So a good friend of mine just came
Quickly,
back from a what?
but just a little bit. Just as you mentioned, we'd play
Is that
around with
okay?
mic stuff. Yep, there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay. Okay. So a friend of mine just got back from a business trip from a location that I will reveal in a moment. He went to the one place in this place where this item was available and picked one up for me. So I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to put it on and we're going to have a good time. I'll be one moment. Speak amongst yourselves.
In the meantime, Game Tape with Tony will be back soon. Currently, everyone doesn't want to do interviews because of the holidays. So we will be back while Will puts on a jersey and awkwardly does it in front of us.
This
Uh,
is officially a fan club show for the Dubai Mighty Camels.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
I had a friend come back from a business trip to Dubai. They told me that if we clipped this out and sent it to them, they posted on all their social media because they were over the moon that some Canadian guy is super into hockey to the point where they're following along with what's going on in the Emirates Hockey League. So shout out to the Emirates Hockey League. Go Mighty Camels, go. We're officially fans, at least I am. Yeah, for any other hockey players listening out there, if you're unaware, the Emirates are serious about all this. I mean, look, they have jerseys for sale now. It is one of the highest paying leagues in Europe/Asia. So check it out. Highly recommend it. The Mighty Camels play at the Dubai Ice Rink, which is in a shopping mall. It's great. You can Google Street View it. It's a good time. Anyway, with that out of the way, we can get into the actual show. I'm already getting sweaty wearing this, but I'm going to keep it on. Just, do it for the memes. And do it for the Mighty Camels. If they can handle the heat of the desert, I can handle the heat of this basement. Okay, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Where do we start here? They're good. Yes,
Seems
they're
like it.
getting good. I mean, the last month, they're top 10 in the league in terms of winning games. We watched a little bit of the Columbus Blue Jackets coming into tonight. They have a bit of a youth movement coming in. Which is kind of fun. We actually took a look at a couple of them, so maybe we talk about a couple of specific ones. And specifically, it was Denton Matejchuk and Luka Del Belbaluz, who both have recently made their NHL debuts. There's definitely a bigger sample on Denton Matejchuk, so maybe we start there. I mean, obviously, part of the team that's pushed things in the right direction a lot are guys like Kirill Marchenko. Adam Fantilli has started to hit his stride a little bit, as we always believed. We're always believers in Adam Fantilli over here. But let's take a look at some of the young guys coming into the league for this team, because they could be a big part of the future. And that will start with Denton Matejchuk. So Tony, I've talked forever about the Mighty Camels and everything. So start us off with Denton Matejchuk, maybe where you started with him back in the day, where you are now. What did you see? What's going down with him?
Well, first off, I have to give a shout out for being on the podcast with future Mighty Camels GM Will Scouch.
Well,
Just
let's not get
what a good
too
time
crazy
that's gonna
now.
be. I can't wait for my fan merch. But no, as for Denton Matejchuk, the kid's creative. He's fun to watch. Back when in his draft year, he was a guy that I watched and I always wanted to rank higher, but I could never quite justify it between like my fun brain and my logical brain, that they could never get on the same page with him because he was fun to watch. He did things that no one else in the WHL would do. Just goofy creative things to evade traffic and evade pressure. I'll never forget one time when he was skating laterally and someone was about to hit him. So he just fired the puck at the boards, like while skating towards the boards, like evaded the check because the guy could no longer hit him because he didn't have the puck, and then just picked the puck back up and went into the offensive zone. Like goofy things like that just absolutely will not work at the NHL level. That's what I remember from Denton Matejchuk. That and one of the game tape interviews from that season, I think that might have been the first season of it, where he was sitting in his car driving somewhere while we talked. So that was a weird one. But a good kid, seems to have a good head on his shoulders, kind of understood where his weaknesses were. That's what I remember from that interview. With that said, watching him in the NHL and the AHL over the last couple of years, he's still Denton Matejchuk. And he still does some weird, unorthodox things. But that means that sometimes he can be pretty fun. He in the game we watched earlier, he scored a goal just creeping into the backside. He tries defensively, but he just doesn't really have the strength or the physicality to do anything defensively. And that's what I noted. The one thing I wrote down in my notes when I was watching the game was he's kind of like a fly on a rhinoceros. Like it's annoying and he's there, but like the rhino can still do what he wants to do. So it's kind of an issue with him defensively that way. And when you're a defenseman, you have to defend. So he's an interesting player, and hopefully with time, strength comes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I come away largely seeing similar things. I watched a couple of games of his today in isolation. And I agree. I mean, from what I remember in 21-22, he is very similar. He is still a guy who I think brings a lot of, like if he has the puck on his stick, he has room to play with, he could be very dangerous, right? Like I think he has a really good understanding of how to misdirect opponents with the puck on his stick. I think he has a really good ability to shake off pressure in the offensive zone and kind of create offense that way. But my whole thing with him for years has been I really love how he plays. I love defensemen who play like him, but you almost have to be at a certain level to play that way in the NHL, and there's no floor really under it,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't think he regresses into a bottom pair guy who can play 12 minutes a night and maybe get on your second power play. Like, I don't think that's going to be his job. That makes a whole lot of sense. Because you're right. Like, I think in the defensive zone is where there were some, I think, issues where you're going, yeah, like, he's a little slow to chase down pucks in the defensive zone. He is a little bit slow to, you know, get in those races to win retrievals. In the game against Seattle, there was a clip of him just getting absolutely stonewalled out away from the puck next to Capo Caco, and just got shaken off of him with a little bit too easily. Granted, again, 9-game NHL career, you can't be too critical, but it is very interesting because nothing really, when I looked at him, I went, this doesn't really change my mind of what I saw of him as a junior hockey player, where there's all this creativity, all this skill, all this really high-end, high-octane creativity. But, it's very interesting, being him with a guy who I had a few slots higher in Lane Hudson, who, again, some defensive deficiencies, but we talked about him ad nauseum on Monday night. The agility and the quickness and the skill level, it's kind of all just ratcheted up in a way that I find and found at the time more believable. I had Matejchuk at 27, I believe, that year. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, 27. And I had Hudson at 24. So I saw a little bit more projectable stuff out of Hudson than I did out of Matejchuk. And I feel like that footwork is kind of what was holding him back in my books. But yeah, 9-game sample. You can't be too complainy. And he scored his first NHL goal in that game that we watched. So that's also a positive. I he's going to be a very interesting one to keep an eye on. The other one, and this one is for Greg Revac, who actually texted me during the show Monday night, and the text only said LDBB on it with a question mark. So just for Greg, we went and took a look at Luca Del Belbelou's in, I believe it was the St. Louis game that he played the other night. Where do we fall on him being an NHL player right now?
He is an NHL player right now, technically speaking. He is in an NHL lineup, and you know what? He's still Luca Del Belbelou's. He's a guy that I think has always struggled to kind of fit into what he was projected to be as a bigger power guy. He's got good handles. He doesn't really have the foot speed. He can get moving. Like if you give him 10 feet to wind up, he can get going, and then he's a handful to deal with. But you don't really have that 10 feet, that 15 feet to wind up at the NHL level. So in the game I watched earlier of him, like he kind of got spun around a few times. Defensively, he's kind of almost a little bit lost. The pace of the game is an issue for him, I think. But he's still young, and he'll probably be back in the AHL to spend time there for the next year or two. And that's probably where he needs to be right now. The NHL, I think, is a little bit too high pace for him. He's got a good shot. He can get around the ice enough, but not really at the pace he needs to at the NHL level.
Yeah, especially for a center. Like he was lining up at center, and that's a demanding job, and he's only played 2 games. You know, that's got to count for something. But I mean, yeah, I think we saw a lot of moments in that game where we're kind of going, yeah, this is why things like skating matter so much. Like this, especially for guys up the middle of the ice. Like he was behind on a lot of plays. He was kind of a step behind defensively. You know, and with the puck on his stick moving up the ice, there just wasn't that speed or that pace of play that really sort of got guys on their heels, and he really sort of quarterbacked a whole lot going up the ice. I believe for stretches of that game, he was largely playing with Kirill Marchenko and Dmitry Voronkov, who I think were the ones who were driving that bus. I mean, we can talk about those guys a little bit because, I mean, you want to talk just like why Columbus has really figured this out. I mean, those two are a big reason why, or at least why they've had such a strong last month. I mean, I've been a big fan of Kirill Marchenko for a while, and he's finally seemed to really hit some stride there. Like he really sort of is one of those guys now who, when he's got the puck on his stick on the ice, you really notice he sort of commands that possession of the ice. He controls the puck really, really well. He's got size and skill, but he's also not slow. Like he brings a lot to the game that you just love. And Voronkov, I think, complements him quite well as well, as sort of that more finishing oriented guy who may not be the puck carrier that Marchenko is, but he's not that far behind. But I mean, from what you've seen of Columbus, is there anything that you kind of want to fire out there that we can sort of dig into? Because those are the 2 guys that really stuck out for me watching a bit of them over the last little while.
Yeah, I think those 2 deserve a ton of credit. I mean, Marchenko's over a point a game. Voronkov's right there, almost a point a game. So when you have 2 guys doing that, they can kind of have a Luca Del Belbelou's on their line and carry him a little bit for a short period of time. But I think Zach Werenski on the back end's been absolutely fantastic. Like he's really having a coming out party. 48 points in 43 games. He's got 13 goals already as a defenseman, which is ridiculous. Sean Monahan looking like the Sean Monahan of old at a point per game already this season. It's a good team. Like they have some guys that are playing quite well. Ken Johnson hasn't played the entire season, but 24 points in 29 games isn't bad. And Fantilli's coming on too. So I think they're having their young guys figure it out kind of all at the same time. And they're coming into their own in a way. And that's what's got them in a wild card spot. But the big thing with them is going to be a guy like Sean Monahan, who is not young anymore and has had a lot of injuries, going to be able to maintain this for the rest of the season? Is a guy like Adam Fantilli going to be able to build off what he's doing right now, where he's got 7 points in his last 10 games? And can Marchenko and Voronkov carry a Luca Del Belbelou's or someone else lower in the lineup that has to get an opportunity, because they need guys to fill spots? So it's an interesting group. If they make the playoffs, it'll be a fun group, but I think they'll probably be a pretty quick out.
Well, I mean, that's
unless
the thing.
They play Tampa.
Well, when you do kind of dig into the sort of more advanced results of the over the last month, I took a quick look today with Columbus, and I mean, I feel like they're kind of outperforming what has been kind of penciled in for them. I think special teams has been doing a lot of good lifting for them as well. But I do think that it is really, really promising that for Columbus, they have, I'm counting on their top scorers list and their top 10, like about half of them, I think, yeah, half of them are like these younger players, right? Fantilli, Sillinger, Johnson, Voronkov, and Marchenko are not old. They're not really, I mean, a few of these guys have been around for a couple of years, but I don't know if you would consider them like veterans. And the other thing too that I also wanted to mention, and AJ mentioned this as well before the show, but watching Denton Matejchuk, I kind of was really impressed with how Ivan Provorov has been playing for them in those games that I saw. Like that's a guy who I think a lot of people kind of have written off a little bit, but he always had that. There's something there with him. There's always been that skill level and that willingness to push play offensively that seems to be coming out a little bit more. I think in a more successful way. And I think that him with Matejchuk, I mean, there were some moments with Matejchuk where I'm going, yeah, there's a lot that's really nice here. There's some good, creativity moments. There's some good breakout work here. But Provorov, I mean, again, with a significantly longer NHL career under his belt, obviously, but there's that, maybe the stride isn't as long as Matejchuk's is, but there's that puck control ability. There's that higher end pace of play, I think, with that I was a little bit surprised to see. So I think with Columbus, I think they just have I mean, at the beginning of the year, I kind of gave them a little bit more credit because a lot of these younger guys, ideally, they should be getting better. Kent Johnson looked pretty good last year from what I remember. And so seeing him come back from injury and putting up the numbers that he's putting up, even if it is a little bit power play heavy, like that is kind of what he does, right? Like he's a point producer, he's a scorer. He if you have the man advantage, he can be devastating. There's a lot to like with them. I mean, I don't know what I would do with them from now until the end of the season. I mean, they made a pretty sizable move, moving David Jiricek and moving on from that. I think they do need a goaltender, like Elvis Merzlikins has been okay over the last month, but if they want to be this like high end team, I think that's a position that might need some work. But in general, they've taken a good step, and I've liked what I've seen out of them, especially in the games that I've seen in the last little while. And I think they're a really interesting example of some of these younger players that are starting to entrench themselves in the league and finding roles for themselves, and it's working in a way. And we'll see how it goes. I don't know. Is there anything you want to add on Columbus before we?
I will interject.
Oh yes, please.
We got to address title name. Are they future? They finally future Stanley Cup contenders. Will, is there a path for this team to get there?
There's a path. There's a path for anyone, AJ.
There's a
path for anybody.
But currently, as they look right now, the guys in their prospect pool, I think that's a thing that we should also touch on a bit. Nelly, William Whitelaw, your boy. How do you feel about them with their futures? And
I mean,
to both of you.
In my model, they are a top 10 pipeline in the league. I think they will need. I mean, you gotta hope that Adam Fantilli sort of finds an offensive touch that gets him to be the productive player that everybody thinks he can be, because you and I have watched him, AJ, and I don't know how much you've seen of him this year, Tony, but like he is just a really impressive player. It's just the puck's not going in the net, right? Yeah. Like some of his shot selection, his distribution in the offensive zone is a little bit questionable, but everywhere else I feel like there's a lot to love there. So if that missing ingredient can come, then there's your top end guy that you really, really need in the NHL these days. But if that doesn't come, if he's just a really, really good sort of second line, two-way contributor in his career, they do need that sort of like lockdown guy, right? Like Columbus is going to be going up against some really, really good top line players in the playoffs one day, right? Like you said, if it's Tampa Bay, you're lining up on the other side, maybe not at center, but like Nikita Kucherov is on the other side of the ice, right? Like that's a bit problematic. But I think they have a really, 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 really good supporting cast. And I think once Gavin Brindley hits the league, that's another huge asset for them to work with.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're sort of taking their time bringing him back from a sizable injury. Luca Pinelli could be a really good goal. Like the idea of Adam Fantilli playing on a line with a guy like Luca Pinelli at some point and just teeing up Luca Pinelli, that could be really fun. Because
And
Pinelli
it's
also has
underrated
this
nasty
grind.
too.
Yes.
Like those
Yeah.
two together would be underrated nasty because
Yeah.
Fantilli has a nasty streak to him, and Pinelli is just kind of a little POS.
Yeah.
So it'd be fun. Like and then Brindley on the other side, just buzzing, doing
Yeah.
his thing.
Just ripping shots, you know?
Oh, the dream.
There's so much potential, I think, with them. I just, you know,
Caden Lindstrom
still
too.
think
We gotta
yeah.
remember him as well.
Yeah, I mean that
Yeah.
was its own thing. I mean that was I think a bit of a risky play, but it seems like there's been an injury setback. He was supposed to be back skating in like July. I remember at the draft time they were talking about that, but it's been pushed back, and I think it's been pushed back again recently. I don't know. Maybe he'll be back soon, but he's missed a lot of time, and so we'll see what happens with that. I mean, when I looked at Columbus in the draft this year, I remember thinking like a Berkeley Catton would be an amazing fit there with how much skill and finishing ability they've drafted over the last little while, and how he can sort of elevate other players, and having him and Fantilli as a 1-2 could be really interesting. But Lindstrom, you know, we'll see. I think Lindstrom's a nice long-term bet. He's just missed a lot of time, so we'll see how that works out. But I think that they're looking like a solid team. Like I think they are looking like a team that can hit the playoff threshold at some point. You know, guys like Johnson are hitting their stride. Marchenko's not old. Voronkov's having a great season. Fantilli is still developing, I would say. There's lots to build on. I don't know, Tony, how are you feeling about the Blue Jackets based on recent trends, so to speak?
I think they're exactly where they want to be. This isn't a team that was supposed to be competing necessarily for a spot in the divisional playoff spots. I think they were hoping to be in the wild card race as the season wore on. Right now, they're in a wild card spot. So if they go up and down a few spots in the standings, I think the goal of this year for the Columbus Blue Jackets was just don't get a top 3 pick again. As much as you would love another top 3 pick, like you don't need another one. You've been down there for long enough now. Like you have to build up at some point. And I think this was an important step for them. We look at them, Montreal, Ottawa, like these teams are all in the kind of the same boat. You want to see them eventually get to a point where they're playing meaningful hockey beyond December. Like
Right.
these teams for the last few years, and Columbus has been a picture perfect example of it. Like January rolls around and you're like, all right, well, who are we trading and what are we competing for in the draft? Like we're getting messages from Columbus Blue Jackets podcast and stuff, and like, oh, let's start doing player profiles and whatnot. Like we have to take the step at some point, and this has done. This season's been a good job of them taking a step and at least giving their fans something to cheer for.
Yeah, I mean that touches on an interesting question, because we are starting to get to the point where teams might start going, are we not really in this anymore? I'm wondering who's the first fan base that starts showing up to the show and going, my team
Buffalo,
is out of it. Buffalo, really?
And Chicago.
So Buffalo is 9 points out of a playoff spot halfway through the year. That's a bit of a challenge to overcome, I would say. You know, that's tough.
Yeah. Chicago and San Jose are 17 points out and 15 points out, so they're kind of same thing. Nashville's right there too.
It seems like the vibes in Chicago are pretty bad. There was talk this morning of that there's a bunch of guys scratched from Rockford, and there are people saying like, oh, are we getting Elias Pettersson or whatever? And it just seems to be like a really bad flu going around. I don't know. But they're looking for something there. I mean, the Buffalo Sabres, though, and I see you looking for a point, but Buffalo does have 3 fewer goals this season than the Toronto Maple Leafs. So
don't care.
Maybe it's just a matter of shoring up that back end, maybe with a deal here or there, and they're a step or two away from maybe making a push here.
Yeah,
but
sure. That's why they have 37 points, and
they're 4 points back
6.
of the next worst team in the conference. That's tough.
Oh, yeah. There's a few teams that are not looking good right now. Like every
Around-
month, I do like a sour ranking at the Hockey News, and basically it's the opposite of a power ranking where I look at the teams that are down bad, to put it lightly. And yeah, every month I'm writing about Chicago. Every month I'm writing about San Jose, Nashville this year, Buffalo. It's a really interesting exercise because you when I do these things, I always look at the market and I look at the vibes. And in San Jose, at least they're loving life. They're like, oh, like Macklin's looking
Yeah.
great. Will Smith is starting to look decent in the NHL. Shakir Makamudulin scored a goal earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
It's good times in San Jose. They know what they are. They know they're supposed to be not great. And although I'm sure they'd like to be a little bit higher in the standings, they're fine with it right now. But I think this will probably be the last year where they're fine with it. Chicago feels like they're fed up with it. They want to fire everybody not named Connor Bedard at this point. And I get it. Like this team was not supposed to be good, but I don't think they meant to be this bad again.
They are.
And Buffalo is their own thing. They are perpetually at the bottom of the standings because whatever it is, they can't figure it out. It's
no palm trees. No palm trees.
I know, right? It's so funny. Like I saw someone posted on Twitter, or maybe it was Reddit or something, where they were like, this is every team's lineup if they didn't trade any of their draft picks away and they just had their own draft picks on their roster. You look at Toronto and it's like, oh wow, this is really good. But like fourth line, third pairing, you're like, oh, they're in the AHL guys. You look at Tampa Bay or any of these lineups, Dallas, like you look at most, and they're like, oh man, like third, fourth line, it really starts to fall off. Not Buffalo. If only they kept everyone. Unfortunately, they traded everyone. Buffalo, their defense core was loaded. Their forward group was loaded. I mean, in net, Linus Ullmark. Like, what are we doing here in Buffalo? Maybe just keep some guys. Maybe this entire Dylan Cousins trade discussion, the trade rumors, all these things. Maybe just keep them because like whoever trades for him goes, oh sweet, we have a 40 goal scorer.
I think it's interesting that we're talking about the Buffalo Sabres because, I mean, again, I don't hate the Buffalo Sabres or anything because when I was a kid, I hated them.
Yeah, I want them to be
the
good.
Dominic Hasek era Buffalo Sabres. That was legendary hockey stuff, and they've had some legendary years in the past. But I think that it was very interesting getting a sort of peek inside the Buffalo Sabres a little bit when the Ryan O'Reilly trade happened, where I think it was who was it? There was some player, was it Vladimir Sobotka or someone like that? One of those guys.
That's a name.
Who got traded, or he quit the Sabres or something, and he went home. I forget, he went back to Europe or something like that. And the media asked him about it, and he's like, I just playing for Buffalo, I lost my love for the sport. I hated it. I couldn't I don't want to do it anymore. I just want to go home.
Patrick Berglund.
Yeah, Patrick Berglund. And it's like, my thing with that is like, I'm fascinated how that happens. Like, how do you get to that point as an organization? Like, I'm not sitting here like saying I know better or anything, but it's to the point with Buffalo, and I said this a few weeks ago, but like, I would just want to be a fly on the wall, like in their office and in their dressing room, like, because I feel like, yeah, you could make the argument, all these guys that they've drafted and traded over the years, it's an all-star team, you could make the argument. But like, they did get, like, they trade away that first generation of guys who have gone on to find success, and then they have a whole new generation of guys. Then that one sort of falls apart, so they trade those guys, and then they have success elsewhere. So it's almost like, yeah, you could make the argument that keeping them, you probably end up doing well, but also like, yeah, it seems like something in the environment there is just like not right. I don't know any better, but I would be fascinated to find out and think about that and get into that a little bit because I just have no idea.
I think it was the Leafs documentary series, the first one with Amazon, where I think it was Paul McLean, the assistant coach, goes, "There are ghosts in the walls, or ghosts everywhere. Like these guys are haunted by the history of the Leafs." And it feels like the Buffalo Sabres are that, but they don't make the playoffs, so it's worse. It feels like every player that goes there is just haunted by the fact that they're not that Dominic Hasek team. They're not that Thomas Vanek, Chris Drury era team. Like, though there were teams, the Buffalo Sabres were once like a horrifying franchise to play in the playoffs. Like, the Leafs went up against them. They had great series in against so many teams in the playoffs, and they made deep runs, constantly going challenging for the conference finals, and they made a finals appearance. Like, this was a team that was once really competitive, and now they just, I mean, worst team in pro sports when it comes to making the playoffs right now. So
Right.
it really is. It's oozing out of the walls. It's coming up in the floorboards. You see it on the bench. Like, this team needs something. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, like hyperbolically, like, they need Sidney Crosby to be traded there and just shake everyone in the organization or something. Like, they need something on that level to just completely change the culture of this team, because they have good players. Like, you look at the lineup and you're like, oh yeah, like, some of these guys are pretty good. Like, they should be scoring more. They should be doing this, or they shouldn't let in 8 goals in a night. And you're like, why did they let in 8? Like, how did that even happen? And it's something I don't have an answer to. You don't have an answer to. Kevin Adams certainly doesn't have the answer to. And countless coaches, including Lindy Ruff multiple times now, doesn't have an answer to. So,
I mean,
it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Sabres now, and I love how this started off as like glazing the Columbus Blue Jackets, and now we're onto a team that's almost on the other side of the coin. And like, a lot of it really does come down to personnel. And like, AJ, you were there. We were looking at their roster, and we kind of looked up and down that team and went, especially on defense, we're like, this doesn't look like a great group of players. Like, and that's I mean, and I hate keeping on bringing this guy up, but like, Owen Power was a first overall pick. I look at Owen Power and I think we're seeing a lot of the reasons, at least for me, why I didn't have him ranked number 1 that year. And if you were to, like, I feel like what they need, and they went out and got Bowen Byram last year and gave up Casey Middlestad, which I think dealt with what one of their issues was, but kind of in the wrong way. Like, I was more fascinated about how adding another dynamic offensive defenseman like Byram what effect that would have on the team. But that's not really what they need, right? Like,
who is left-handed.
The other thing, yeah, that's what I was going to say, is all of them are on the same side. You're automatically forcing one of them to play the opposite side,
which is really hard.
Now he's on trade boards.
Right. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to do that well, especially in the NHL.
Hold my mind. Like, why? I saw it coming from a mile away last year. Why are you doing this? You're trading what you need for what you don't, and you're going to have a surplus of it. And now, like in Casey Middlestad, because right now they're lacking another center. Really need another center. And Casey Middlestad is filling that role fantastically for Colorado Avalanche, a team that would contend for a Stanley Cup. Could that be another guy that goes on and wins a Stanley Cup, right? Like, it's not impossible. Colorado Avalanche. I don't think it's going to happen based on like some of the other teams in the league, but Colorado is right there as one of the better teams.
Yeah, I mean, so the league average save percentage is 894. So Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is basically a league average goaltender this year, which also probably factors in too, right? Like, I don't know off the top of my head how many teams are in a playoff spot with league average goaltending or worse, but I don't think it's that many. Like, I'm just looking, I sorted teams by points percentage, and the first team that has below average save percentages is Edmonton, but they're a thousandth of a percentile below average. And where is Buffalo? Buffalo's sitting.
Edmonton's also a different animal, right?
Yeah, they're a different. Yes. But yeah, they have other things on their team that can work. Like
McDavid. That's it. Like, that's all you need.
Like a Matthias Ekholm on Buffalo would be something, but he's not. By the way, Buffalo has the 29th ranked save percentage in the league. So I don't know. It's really tough. And I they have guys like Alex Tuck, who I think are heart and soul Buffalo Sabres guys. And I think that that's the type of player that they need to cling to. And it's a tough situation, but I still look at them and go, there are really good pieces there. It's just a matter of like building a line, like a lineup construction thing where it's
Yeah.
like they need some mobile insulation defensemen
Mm-hmm.
who can round out that offense, because I think their forward group is pretty good as it is. Like it's not bad. They're scoring goals, right? Like they're not the worst offense in the league by far. So there's got to be. I don't think it's like they're a dumpster fire. Outside of like culturally, it seems they're down bad. But anyway, it's yeah. Someone just commented Rasmus Anderson on the Buffalo Sabres would be a huge ad for them. By the way, shout out Calgary Flames. They're up 3-1 after one period against the Chicago Blackhawks tonight. By the way,
That's not impressive.
The juggernaut Blackhawks that we
go
always
Blackhawks.
talk glowingly about.
Oh boy. But anyway, the Sabres are a very interesting team, and I would be fascinated to be sort of poking around and seeing what's going on there, because it's simultaneously both like not going so great, but I think there is light at the end of the tunnel, I suppose.
Is there?
You gotta hope.
It feels like there always is light at the end of the tunnel, and it just gets further and further away every time.
Like their defense, but like you look at their defense group: Jacob Bryson, Bowen Byram, Connor Clifton, Rasmus Dahlin, Dennis Gilbert, Henry Jokiharju, Owen Power, Matthias Samuelsson. Like if you can revamp that.
Mm-hmm.
That goes a long way, I think.
But part of the problem is nobody wants to go to Buffalo. And it's not because there's no palm trees. It's because they've been in a bad situation many, many years. And it's hard to convince players to want to go there. How do you sign guys in the offseason if your franchise has such a poor reputation where I think they're on a lot of no-trade lists anyways, and a lot of people don't speak very glowingly about it, and all these guys have infinitely more success when they move on. What does that say about your organization? Like, they have to... like, maybe they can find somebody through a trade, like a younger player to do that with, but at the same time, it's like, they have to build up goodwill with the guys they have now in order to get other players... like to really help build the reputations. Other players would be like, no, what we're building here is good, actually. And here's some of the things they're doing. But it's always like 1 step forward, 3 steps back for the Buffalo Sabres. Not even 2, 3.
Right. Yeah. Well, on that cheery note, let's, before the Q&A part of the show, Tony, you were last on the show about a month ago, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a month or so. For the rankings thing that we did, the spiel, that fun little exercise we did. What's kind of changed one way or the other for you in the month since? Because for me, I know that there's been quite a lot of shifts, especially having taken a little bit of a break over Christmas and now coming back and really hitting the ground running. Yeah. What's maybe like a small handful, so to speak, of guys that you might want to just like fire off before we get into the Q&A of the show?
So quick Cliff's notes of the top of the draft for me right now is when we last spoke and we revealed our rankings, there was kind of a group of 5 at the top that I felt they all had arguments for first overall, and I feel like that's broken up into 3 groups now for me. I think Michael Meese is the top guy, and for me, there isn't anyone else in that group with him. It's just Michael Meese right now. Every time I watch him, I come away more and more impressed. So for me, he's solidified himself at the top. And then you have James Haggins and Matthew Schaefer. And I think that's the group that can easily challenge Michael Meese. I think they're as close to him as they could be without really being in that same group for me. I went back and I watched all 3 of them today, and that's how I came away from it still. And that makes Porter Martone and Victor Eklund 2 guys that were in that first overall conversation for me now that have kind of moved out of it. And it's not for either of them being bad players by any means. I think Porter Martone is still leading the OHL in points per game. Victor Eklund's still an absolute menace on both sides of the puck. I just think both of them have kind of shown little things that have differentiated themselves from that first overall conversation. With that said, I don't think there's anyone really close to them for top 5 spots for me. So they're kind of in their own little like quasi group behind that. And then the guys that have kind of fallen down for me a little bit, rewatching Caleb Denoyer, you and I were talking about it earlier today, I think, or yesterday, and you used the word milk toast, and that, for me, I was like, that's the perfect way to put it. Like, he's not a bad player by any means. He's not making bad plays. He's just not doing enough for me to really like jump on that bandwagon. Where I see some people have him in the top 10, it's just not there for me. I think Malcolm Spence is a guy that they don't play the same way, but they come away with similar results in my opinion. They find points, they do things offensively that I'm like, okay, like that got you 2 points tonight, but I don't know if I see that happening for him in the future either. So I think he's bumped down a little bit for me. In Zeb Lundgren, I think I love the guy still. I think I just was a little bit too high on him. I am right near 20. He's still in the first round, but he's bumped down a little bit. And then for guys that I've liked a lot, I've rewatched Benjamin Kindle a couple times. I know he's your boy, and he's popped up for me. Shane Van Sage from Michigan State's popped up a little bit. Ivan Ryabkin continues his downfall despite coming to the USHL and looking like a semi-functional hockey player.
Poor kid.
Jack Murtagh and Jacob Wozniak, I think, are two guys that have dropped down the board a little bit for me. I think for Murtagh, I fell into that CHL USA top prospect game hype where I looked at Murtagh, and I mean, I still had him at 50, I think, so it wasn't like he was super high by any means, but he's fallen down a couple spots because I watch him and I go, okay, like, just because you looked like the best player on the ice for those two games doesn't necessarily mean you're very good. And it's not to say that he's a bad player by any means, because I do think he's one of the better NTDP players. I just don't know if that's a really good group. So best of a mediocre group doesn't necessarily mean a really high end player and first round pick quality guy. So it's been an interesting group or time, because like I took some time off for the holidays as well because I was busy with hosting and this house and putting doors in frames that weren't exactly square and stuff. So it's been a time, but yeah, hitting the ground running since the new year. Basically, it's been interesting to look back at some of the guys that I was either higher or lower on and going, maybe I was a little bit too high or low on either.
Like Will.
Okay. Is that, there we go.
Yep, it's good.
Yeah. Okay. We'll continue. I mean, yeah, so I've circled back on a lot of these guys over the last week or 2 weeks, and I mean, so just I think a lot of what you're talking about makes a lot of sense to me. Like I think you can't glean too much from the World Juniors.
Yeah.
But I was extremely impressed with Victor Eklund at that tournament for the Swedes. I felt that even when Porter Martone was playing, I felt that a lot of the issues that are kind of there they got kind of exacerbated a little bit. Not saying again that like it's a troubling thing. I mean, most draft eligible players at the World Juniors don't show particularly amazingly all the time. And most players on Canada didn't show particularly amazingly. But, he still did showcase Victor Eklund, that is. I think he showcased a lot of what I think might, in my view, for next ranking, like bump him up to that 4 slot for me, where I think there's a ton to chew on and work with, where just the speed and the physicality and the tenacity and the finishing ability, it's all just so there. And it's so valuable to me in the NHL that I feel like that's, Martone might be that resilient physical guy who can, it's just it's becoming very difficult for me between at least those two players. I agree. Ben Kindle continues to be just the chosen one for me. He's been bumped up a couple of slots. He's in my top 10 now. He's on, I believe, like a 30-game point streak or something, like 20-something game point streak, 2 points a game the last 10. The guy's a machine. I've been blown away with him all season. I've got another game of his to look at in the next week, but just checking back in on him because I had him really high. I kind of went, yeah, I'm keeping him there. It's to the point where, I had him penciled in as a shortlist option for a team scouching pick in the late second round where Toronto picks. I would be stunned if he was there. I would be shocked. So I kind of pulled him off the list because, if he were there, I would be blown away. But I just can't see that happening. Braden Coots is a guy that's moved up. I've seen the Thunderbirds a little bit over the last little while. I did a game of Radim Murtka today, and Coots and your boy Matej Pekash were really fun. They played together. A lot of speed on that line, a lot of skill. I thought Coots was quite impressive. Jake O'Brien is another one that I took another look at. I've really liked Jake O'Brien a lot more than I thought I would coming into the season. Really good combination of length and stride length and speed, but some really creative skill and a lot of things that I think work well in the NHL. I actually have bumped up two guys quite a bit, which is Cameron Reed and Blake Fiddler. So Reed, I mean, I think Reed is a bit of a flawed player, especially off the puck, defensively, on the rush, all those things, which is not particularly uncommon. But there's this like almost Thomas Harley like game there where he has that straight line speed, that confidence, that ability to just blow past guys and really get a good head of steam going that is pretty hard to find. And Blake Fiddler is almost kind of like the opposite, where there's really good defensive habits, I think, from him, really smart off puck player most of the time. There are moments where he just gets moving through the neutral zone and you're going, oh, okay, like you're capable of this too. That's great. And so for me in that range from Coots back to almost the end of the first round, where I have guys like Desnoyers and Cameron Schmidt, it's so close to me. Like I'm becoming more interested in these players the more I see them, but it's so close. Like I really don't know. It's getting to the point where I kind of feel like you come away and go, well, who do we vibe with the most? What kind of player are we what's our goal, right? Like what kind of players do we value? Because you could argue a bunch of different ones. I will also mention before I throw it back to you, like the name that I actually hadn't checked out yet until I recently did, and I watched him play a pro game in Sweden, was Gustav Hillstrom, who I was really impressed with at that level. A guy who, again, when you have a bunch of guys at that level, you have to, in my opinion, at least check out their ice time with the men's team if they play there and what that looks like. And I think with a guy like Milton Yestrin, who I have right with Hillstrom right now, I think Yestrin shows a bit of a weakness with the pace of his game and the speed of his game, and I think that gets exposed in the SHL. Whereas with Hillstrom, there's just a combination of smarts and really good straight line speed and tenacity there that I was really surprised about. I liked him coming into the season. I didn't have him ranked on my first list because I just hadn't seen enough of him. And now that I have seen a good chunk of him, I've really, really liked him, and he's ended up much higher on my list than I thought he would. On the other side of things, I think I had LJ Mooney too high. I love him. I think he's got so much upside. He only has one goal this year, which I think is criminal, but there are issues. And the bar for him, like I wrote it in the office hours post I made today for subscribers, the bar for guys like him is up here. Like you cannot botch puck possessions. You cannot miss on pass attempts. You cannot go in the corners and bounce off of a guy and lose and not gain possession of the puck, or at least cause enough of a havoc that there's a battle there. He just doesn't get there for me, and it's unfortunate because I think there's tons there. But I had him in the first round. I don't anymore. But he's one that I've kind of readjusted on, and it's getting to the point where I'm kind of going, you know what? If he's there in the third, fourth round, I would maybe take a swing on him. He's the third or fourth guy I'm drafting. Take a swing on him. There's a huge amount of upside, but I'm not sure I buy it right now. But I do think he might be getting a little better. I've seen him a couple of times. He might be getting better coming off of his injury, but I'm not sure. But any further thoughts on these guys, or any sort of movement in the last month for you that you kind of wanted to go over?
Well, Blake Fiddler is an interesting one. You talked about him a little bit, and I remember when we did our rankings, I had him just inside the top 20. And I think with him, it's the fact that he is that defensive presence, but he brings capable puck skill and capable puck moving ability. And I think that's what you want from a defensive guy. And I look at him, and we were talking about Buffalo and the kind of defenseman they need.
I was just going to say the same.
Blake Fiddler in Buffalo would be so perfect for that team. But like, they can't rush a guy like that either. And That's what they need, a guy now. They don't need a guy 3 years from now, unfortunately.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun group of players. I think you mentioned Cameron Reed. I think he's really fun to watch. I really like him. Braden Coots as well. I still really like Arvid Drott. Eric Nilsson's still
Oh, yeah.
fantastic. I got some pushback privately from people for having him as high as I did. But I don't care. You're wrong. He's good. Like, go watch him again. So he's a guy, and in Lyndon Lakovic, I need to shout out him again. Every time I watch this guy, I go, yeah, that's my kind of
Yeah.
guy. Like
Yeah,
I like
he's
the
a good
way
one.
he plays the game of hockey. And Carter Bear, loved him. I just want to say that he didn't move much up in my ranking because there wasn't really much room for him to move up, but still love him.
I'm going to throw out a thought, and you can tell me I'm nuts, but this just came to me. I watched Carter Bear as well in the last little while. I thought he was great. I think Carter Bear has so much in his game that I think works so well in the NHL. I would love to have him on my team. For me, he's in the same tier as a Porter Martone. And there is a part of me, having seen both of these guys a bunch, that almost thinks that Bear plays a more, maybe not as skilled or as high end sort of creativity wise game that Martone plays, but I think he has the stuff that Martone is kind of deficient in, but needs. I think Bear brings. Like, I see him zipping around the ice at the size that he is, flattening guys, going to the net. He just does the thing. He just goes to the net, attack all the time. He's been very productive this season, actually not that much less productive than Porter Martone. They're comparable in age. And when I watch those two back to back, I keep just going, you know, I think there's a higher ceiling with the one, but like what the other one is bringing already is really impressive. And I think there's a lot to love there with a guy like Carter Bear. But that also just came to me because I'm looking at them both on my list now, and I'm going, based on what I've seen, yeah, like I don't know, but maybe I'm out to lunch. I don't know. What are you? Am I fired from my own show?
No, they're not far off of my rankings. They're like a few spots apart, but they're in that same group. Like I said, like Martone and Eklund have kind of they're kind of that 4-5 group for me right now. And Bears right in that group right behind them. So it's like, is it crazy to think that Bear could climb up or Martone could fall down and Eklund's the top guy among those guys? I think there's a realistic shot because, like you said, like every time I've watched Carter Bear this year, it's just not only am I like, at the end of the day, hockey is entertainment, and I am entertained by
Yes.
watching Carter Bear every
Yeah.
single time I watch him. But he's just so effective. He's so good at so many different things. And I love the kid. I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic. He's going to stick in my top 10, fight for my top 5 possibly. He's a very good player. But before we move on from the draft eligibles, one guy I did want to mention, and I want to get your thoughts on because we saw him at the World Juniors. Logan Hensler. Now that you've seen him outside of Wisconsin and the dumpster fire that program has been the last couple of years, what were your thoughts? Because there were moments where he looked like Logan Hensler did from last year, and then there were moments where he looked like he was this year.
I don't really yeah, I mean, this is it. Like, I don't know. I really did try to focus on him when he did play for the NTDP. And I still, I look at a guy like him relative to a Sasha Boumedienne, and I actually did games of those guys back to back before the break, and I liked Boumedienne more. Like,
Yeah.
I thought with Boumedienne, I could go, okay, I could be the head coach behind you on the bench, get over your shoulder, and like kind of help guide you in a direction of like what you could be really good at. And I don't think he's found that comfort level yet. I don't know how to explain it. Like, he's a really good skater, he's got some good skill, but he doesn't carry the puck a whole lot. He doesn't pass. He passes the puck okay, but it's kind of panicked a lot of the time. He's an okay defender, but gets beat a little bit too often to be like, yes, that's your job. And I know he's young for the draft for the NCAA, of course, but I can at least work with what he's got and see where he goes with it. Whereas with Hensler, like at the World Juniors as well, like I didn't think he was really much of an impact player like at all. I thought he was okay. And I see a player who, when I've seen him with Wisconsin and when I've seen him with the U.S. national team, it's very, and I came into the season sort of thinking this, but it's very sort of Sam Dickinson like, where it's like, I don't know quite what his job is going to be. And the things that he's best at are like a relatively small part of the job that a defenseman is supposed to be doing, right? Like when Hensler has the puck below the goal line and wheels up and can get a good head of steam going, he can be a hard player to stop. He's big, he's strong, he'll power right through you. But the finer points, I think, are a bit of a softer point for him. So I don't know. I since the draft, since our first ranking, I have bumped him down a few slots. He's in my second round now. But I also need to check him out again because he's a tough one for me, right? I also think there are other defensemen that I think have just jumped him a little bit here. Like I'll throw one back at you and then we'll move on. But the guy that I went back and looked at a couple more times over the last month has been Quinn Beauchesne in Guelph, who started off not very productive this season, but has kind of started to turn it on a little bit. He's up to 12 points this year in 28 games, and that's not a great productive season, but a lot of that has come in the last little while. And I really have liked what he brings to the table. Again, it's kind of that Boumedienne style where it's like, I think there's a lot of offense out of Beauchesne where I'm going, yeah, like some really impressive offensive zone movements, misdirection and evasion and creativity working the blue line to open up the slot a little bit, which I love. And he has this like physicality defensively and this intensity level, but he's not particularly big or strong right now. And so it's like, what is he in the NHL? For me, I don't know. But whenever I've seen him, I find him really impressive. He's a really good skater, gets around the ice really well, breaks up plays really well. He works with a guy, Danila Skvortsov, who's much bigger, a little bit more of a safer defensive zone or neutral zone defender guy. But Beauchesne is a guy who I've just been really impressed with. And when I looked at those two back to back, because I had Hensler and him, I had Beauchesne relatively high, but then I watched those two back to back. I could at least point to Beauchesne and go, I can work with this and I can see where you could go here. Whereas Hensler, I still feel like I'm not sure what that is. I don't know. Where do you come down on this?
Yeah, I think with Hensler, I remember last year talking to you and going, I feel like where he was last year was where Sam Dickinson was last year, but Hensler was the following draft class. So there was more room to grow. I remember even saying to you, I'm like, if he keeps progressing, I think Hensler can be what Sam Dickinson could be if he figures it out. And unfortunately, I don't think Hensler has really taken the step I think everyone expected him to take, and he just still hasn't figured it out. As for Quinn Beauchesne, you talk about him, and every time I watch him, I go, okay, like I'm not really excited about what you're doing. You're effective. You're doing things well. You move well. You throw some hits. You kind of play this defensively smart game. And when you're talking about him just now, and you're like, who he plays like, and this, that, and the other thing, and the first player that popped in my mind was TJ Brody. Like maybe Quinn Beauchesne ends up being a TJ Brody at the NHL level, a guy that every once in a while flashes offensive skill where you're like, oh, like if he did that more often, he could be a guy that puts up a decent amount of points. But he just doesn't, because that's not really his game. He has the ability to, but he doesn't have to. And I think his defensive game is where he succeeds. And I think that's kind of where I think he ends up at the NHL level if he gets there. I like Quinn Beauchesne. He was a guy that was on my watch list when we did our rankings, and he's moved up into my actual list since then, because as much as I want my players to be exciting, I just talked about hockey's an entertainment product. Quinn Beauchesne isn't going to necessarily go out there and entertain you, but he's going to allow the guys that do entertain you to do what they do. And I think that's a key point as well. We talked about Blake Fiddler being a good complementary defenseman for an guy. I thought that's why him and Schaefer worked together at the CHL USA game together like so well. I think Quinn Beauchesne brings some of that element too. Like he's not the guy that is entertaining you, but he's allowing the guys to entertain you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before we get to the Q&A though, I want to bring up one guy. I don't know if you've seen much of him, but have you seen much of Theo Stuxelius in Djurgården?
I've seen Theo Stixelius in passing. He's not a guy that I've focused a ton on, but I know you and Mikhail have talked about him a number of times.
Points,
And every time I
points,
watch him, I
points.
go, sure, guys.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I at first I was like you. At one point I was like you, but after a couple of games, I mean, they took the first couple of games I saw, he was playing center, and he has absolutely no business being a center, I don't think, right now. Slow, not the most mobile guy. He's got some good footwork, though. I think the fundamentals of his skating stride are pretty good. He's a July birthday, so he's also pretty young. And yeah, you can look at the point production and go, "Oh my God, he's elite." But I don't think that that's really like it. I think he's a really fascinating example, and I'll see. This maybe changes your mind. I don't know, but I think he's a fascinating example of an actually good player that development will only make better. Like he is really creative, working, spinning off pressure, finding lanes, creating passing lanes. He jams his way into scoring areas and tries to make plays in that area. Like he's that type of guy where in the NHL you see guys all the time where they'll get maybe into the faceoff circle, right? And NHL defenses will be on top of you in that area of the ice. That's what they're trying to protect. But there are really good players in the NHL who can get to that point and find a way to make a play, right? Through someone's legs, work off of pressure, spin around, or wrap the puck around someone else and use their reach, something like that. And he does that all the time in Sweden when I've seen him. And it's like he's quite young. And I look at, I don't think he's at all comparable to a guy like Roger McQueen, but he is 6'4". I think he's really tall, really lanky. He's almost a year younger. And I'm going, well, okay. Obviously, I'm not talking Theo Stixelius top 10, right? I'm not out of my mind that much. But if I can get a guy like that who has that like development argument and go, let's give him 4 years in Sweden, and I think he has improved over the course of the season, especially moving off of center and moving to the wing. I think that there could be a really, really good projection there with him because he scores points for a reason. And a lot of it to me isn't necessarily like he's riding on the backs of more speedier, talented, skilled guys, but I think he complements them really well with, for being a big guy like that, pretty good skill level, really good play under pressure. He finds a way out of jams. I was curious if you had seen him recently because I did a game of him a few days ago, and then I had seen him before Christmas. And at first, I was kind of a doubter. And the more I watched and the more data points I gathered on him, the more I went, okay. Like now I see where the offense is coming from, and there might be something neat here. And if someone said our development coaches can work on his skating and get him stronger and faster, and the brain can stay the way that it is and how smart he is, then I think that could be quite something. But I thought I'd throw him out there before we get to the questions of the day.
Well, he's not a guy I've seen since before Christmas, but I will put him down on the sheet. I will watch him again
I would
this
recommend
week.
it. Yeah.
And maybe I'll go, there's something there. But every time I've watched him, I go, that was fun. And then I go, what is happening sometimes?
To me, he's a good example of a guy who is good at the boring stuff that works in the NHL. Like he doesn't have the flash, the razzle dazzle, the speed, the intensity level, the whatever. Like his defensive game, I don't think is particularly great because he's a little slow and gets behind play a lot.
Yeah.
And that's problematic. But the boring stuff as an offensive zone player, I think there's a really impressive play. Like, I don't know if I should say this,
Do it.
but I'm gonna. But like, he's not this player. But in 5 years, I could see him serving a similar role as to what Uri Slafkovsky is doing with Montreal, where on the boards and that strength that Slafkovsky has is really high end, and it helps, and it complements guys like Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki really, really well. And Slafkovsky can make a pass, skate, be that third guy in, go to the net, be a guy that makes plays in that area of the ice. And Stixelius, if you can put on some weight, maybe get a little bit quicker, there could be a similar vibe to him there, where you kind of alleviate him from that role as a 200-foot middle of the ice center guy. Because I see a lot of that stuff with Slafkovsky where I watched him at the time and I went, yeah, he's going to play in the NHL because he's so strong and he makes plays in tough areas and he makes those really difficult plays that a lot of guys struggle to do at that age. But now I see with a guy like Stockselius, there's a bit of a vibe there. And if I'm not mistaken, Slafkovsky was a late birthday from the previous year. So he had the extra year of development, or am I wrong on that? I'll double check.
So you're saying he's a first overall talent. That's what I heard.
I can't wait for Stockselius to find his way onto the Four Nations roster and score 7 goals in 7 games.
He will not. He will probably not. I'm saying he maybe turns out to become similar to a player that was drafted first overall as that player is now, if that makes any sense.
So here's my question. Who scores more points in 2031-32? Stockselius or Slav?
Probably Slafkovsky.
Doc or Slav.
Yeah. You heard it here first. Slafkovsky is better
that
than
that can be the podcast name, Stock or Slav.
Nah, pass. Well, I think that's a good unless you have any final things to throw out there, I think that's a good time as any, as good a time as any to flip over to answering some questions in the chat. Of course, as always, if you fire any questions in the chat until the end of the show, we're gonna get to as many as we possibly can. So we'll start from the top here. What do we got?
Bill.
Ad
read. Sorry.
Do I have to?
We're
brought to you by the Dubai Mighty Camels, the greatest hockey team to ever exist. By the way, this logo, I don't know if I showed it, but what the hell? Look how sick! It's sick. They know what they're doing. This is legit. It's a really nice garment that I'm wearing, and I am getting sweaty again, so I'm going to slow down. I'm going to calm down. Anyway, we are brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link in the chat or scan the QR code in the video window, and you'll give us a small kickback on anything you buy in the store. You can also support smart people like me and Jordan Millette and Joel Henderson and not Tony Ferrari by getting a puck prep subscription where you'll get all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs. There's all kinds of stuff going on over there these days, so you can check that out. And of course, you can get a subscription at Scouching.ca where you'll get access to a Discord server. You'll make Tony and AJ and I very happy. You'll get access to data tables, visualization tools that are being updated this week, and plenty of other good stuff you can check out at Scouching.ca. So check it out and buy our merch at Scouchwear.com as well. We got some cool stuff in there as well. Or send us $1 billion through buymeacoffee.com if you just want to give us some money and
buy us 1 million coffees.
Nice. Yeah, buy us 1 billion coffees. Hey, here's an idea. If you send us 10 billion coffees, maybe we could buy TikTok and save it from the clutches of the United States government. That would be a thing. There you go.
Or we could buy the Dubai Fighting Camels.
Yeah. Give them a $10 billion budget, and yeah, that's the stuff.
Connor McDavid, come on over.
Come on down.
Crosby retires with the Dubai Fighting Camels. That's wild.
Yeah. Have you Connor McDavid? Have you seen the Dubai ice rink and its bleachers that fit 200 people? It's really beautiful.
Actually, Connor McDavid's birthday today. Funny enough.
Oh, happy birthday, Connor McDavid.
He's 28 years old.
I texted him earlier. We're close personal friends.
I see.
Yeah, I didn't. He didn't text me back. We're not. He left me on red. Yeah, but I mean, I shouldn't make fun of the Dubai Mighty Camels place where they play. It's actually really cool. This really, really huge shopping mall across the road from the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. And it's this like massive shopping complex. They've got a go-kart track in there. This massive arcade. It's wild to.
It's like the West Edmonton Mall on steroids.
Yeah, it is. It's insane there. It's like it's like a whole entertainment complex. And I mean, I guess when it's 45 degrees out every day, you kind of have to find somewhere like that to do stuff. But I think it's a really cool idea, though, to have a team that you're playing a showcase sport that nobody knows a thing about, and you're doing it on where everybody is, right, at a shopping mall. You might get 20,000 people at the Bell Center, or you might get 25,000 people walking by an ice rink in a gigantic shopping mall in the middle of one of the fastest growing cities in the world, or whatever it is. I don't know what you call Dubai, but anyway, point is, sometimes we could buy the team with 1 billion coffees. So consider it. All right. First question of the day, of course, is David Phillips. Always a friend of the show, always on us as fast as humanly possible. Thoughts on Alexander Okulov? And I think this is a guy who is, no, I'm not touching this. He's played 4 games this season for Dynamo St. Petersburg's NMHL team with an .859 save percentage in 4 games and a .424 goals against average. So he's 6'5", so maybe he'll get drafted. You know, there's a chance. There's a chance, but let's forget about it. Okay, so someone commented, na Arvid Drott. So I think this is an Arvid Drott fan. You mentioned Arvid Drott earlier. I haven't seen him in a while, so I went and I don't know. Like, I can't remember. Was it a positive or a negative direction for you on him? Because I'm a huge
He just
fan.
stayed kind of where he was. I still very much
stagnant.
like Arvid Drott.
Got it.
I still very much like him. He's a very good player.
Right.
Kind of still all tools, working on everything else, but
yeah.
I like Arvid Drott. He's a fun guy.
Yeah. Someone mentions thoughts on Vladislav Ukhmilov. I watched a game of him and he had a handful of good moments, but apart from that, he's strange. I agree. He is strange. I really like him as an idea of a hockey player. I think he's a guy that you leave in Russia for a decade and see what happens with him. Because there are pockets and moments where I'm going, oh, that's sick for a 6'4" defenseman to, you know, carry the puck like that and deke a goalie like he does sometimes. And some of the offensive tools are really, really good, but he only has 7 points this season for some reason. But he's 6'4", 163 pounds. He's a string bean. There's lots of development room there, I think. I don't know. Have you seen much of Ukhmilov, or is this an unknown territory for you? Because I know I spent a long time not shutting up about Vladislav Ukhmilov.
No, he's a guy I keep circling back on because the first game I watched of him made me fall in love with this guy. With that said, there have been some really bad moments. He's a fun player though. Like you said, at 6'4", 6'5", whatever it is, the way he's able to move and handle the puck at times, you see something there that you're like, man, if these flashes become more than flashes, maybe he's a guy you take and you just leave in Russia, like you said. With that said, I don't know how high he'll necessarily be on my end of year board. Fun player though, definitely a swing to take it in the latter half of the draft.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if he got drafted, but I would also not be very surprised if he showed back up on people's radars in 2027 or something.
Yeah.
as a guy who's in the VHL or something doing decently well. Anyway, okay, what re-entry candidates will get drafted due to World Junior performance? That's a very good question.
Terry Rimpinen.
Yeah, Rimpinen probably gets a pick, even though he's only 6 feet tall.
I think I talked to somebody about him and they went, oh yeah, like he's small though, but he is having a really good year in Finland. He's producing great numbers. He's been fantastic. He was the reason, in my opinion, Finland got to the gold medal game. Like the guy was stellar. So I think he's the first name that jumps out to me.
Yeah, I mean the one I would throw out there is Julius Sumpf in Germany. I really thought he was a guy who, and I went into the tournament curious about him because he plays with Caleb Desnoyers, and I felt that Sumpf was doing a lot of the heavy lifting with Desnoyers on the ice, physically especially. But Sumpf was a guy who, for the Germans, I thought really carried that team in a good way. Like he's big but strong and gets up the ice really quickly and has some good skill to him. I got to see him up close, which was really impressive. He was really commanding the ice, especially on the power play for that German team. And I put him on my watch list just so I'm sort of sitting there going, all right, like I could see this guy being something, you know, that maybe is a late round swing, and you put him in the AHL next year, or you send him to Germany next year and see how he does in the Dell. The other one I would say that maybe gets a call is, what was his name? David Gronberg for Sweden. I've seen him in years past, and I've kind of liked what he's done, especially that he's got some good straight line speed and good physical tools. But I'm not sure I would jump at the chance at drafting him. But he's one that also popped for me. Outside of the guys that were re-entries that I would have drafted last year, like Topias Hunanen, who we all know sucks. But anyway, yeah,
Scratched the first game for Finland, not even good enough to make the team.
Yeah, and then he was their fourth leading scorer or something.
We're not going to talk about the fact that he was sick for that game, but
yeah, no, we're not going to talk. We're just not going to talk. We're done. The show's over. But yeah, I think those are. Yeah, I think those are some decent options. You're probably right on Rimpinen though. Have you checked in with your boy Ivan Fomin recently? Yes, I watched him. I watched him today. Actually, I did a game of his because I wanted to feel joy. And I did feel joy. He's a joyful hockey player. I don't know the last time you've seen him play, Tony, but I inundated you with clips of him today.
Yeah.
Because I was having so much fun watching him. Obviously, I mean, he wasn't particularly productive in this one. He, kind of had a bit of a quieter game. But I am going out of my way to track him against the best competition he plays against because they don't get a whole lot of great competition playing in Vladivostok. But it was a game in Moscow, I believe, that he was playing in. Pretty good team, the junior team, Dynamo Moscow. I mean, he is what he is. I love him dearly. Would I use the 224th pick on him? Sure. And leave him in Russia until he's 27 years old? Sure. Right? I just think he's so much fun, and I think he's just, going to go up and up and up from here. But again, it's similar to LJ Mooney, where it's like, you got to be up here. You can't waste anything. You can't screw anything up, right? Like, you have your job, and your job is to score or set plays up. He's really good at it. But yeah, I love him, but he is what he is. I don't know. I don't know when the last time you saw him was, but
he was actually he was the first player I watched when I came back from my quote unquote Christmas break. I was like, let's just have fun. Let's just have fun, get back into hockey, enjoy life. And he went out there and he had fun. He also almost died. I think twice in the game. Yes. I watched. Yep. But he got up and he kept going. So that's a positive, I guess. I mean, fun player. I joked about it on the ranking episode where I said he's the guy all year that's going to be the last player on my ranking, no matter if it's 50 players or 150 players. And I will not be ranking 150 players just to quickly get ahead of that. But he's going to be on my ranking just because he brings joy. He brings happiness. Does he get drafted? Probably not, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, he may have moved up on my list a little bit, but only, again, I know every time I bring him up, Dylan Griffin goes out of his way to tell me that he sucks, and I just disagree. I want him in my system, and I would love to be in communication with the guy and be like, look, like, you put in the work and you put in blah, 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 blah. I think there's something there. Because, like, in reality, right, when I watch him, relative to all the Russians we've seen over the years, right, like all of them, he's productive, and you can see why. And I'm going, at what point in the draft does he become the most exciting, just swing in the dark out there? And in this class, I feel like that inflection point is relatively quick. Yeah. There, I think, are other better bets you could make, but boy, howdy. I mean, like, imagine if Ivan Fomin were Canadian and drafted in the 6th round because he's tiny and maybe he plays in the BCHL or something and comes to rookie camp in the summer. Like, how quickly is he on Twitter trending with some ridiculous, like, nonsense that he pulls off, right? Like, obviously there's more to hockey than that. But holy smokes, I'm a huge fan. I don't know. I just can't help myself. I just can't. He's the guy. He's the guy for me now. I don't know. But
I love it.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, I might be off my rocker. This is a weird one. Rank Daniil Imurzin, Maxim Shabanov, and Daniil Gutic in terms of NHL likelihood. I mean, I would say Imurzin's probably the only one I would give a shot to, but I also haven't seen a tremendous amount of those guys.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you take this one.
I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that.
Is probably the only player worth caring about.
Thoughts on Tommy Lafreniere? I've seen him here and there. Like, he's a smart guy. I don't have him ranked.
Smart,
I don't know.
tries hard, loves the
Yeah,
game.
he's fine. I think he could get drafted. I think he'll
Yeah.
get a pick. And if he's a mid-round, late-round pick, I would go, yep, that's a decent player that you got with that draft pick. As good a chance as any. Most physical projected impact forward in the draft. Bear.
Yeah, I was gonna say Carter Bear.
Yeah,
Porter Martone, maybe.
Maybe
But, like,
McQueen.
Yeah.
Don't get too excited.
Yeah, there's not a ton of like super. I mean, Kayshawn Aitchison.
Well, yes, but he's not a forward.
I just went impact player.
Yeah, Van Sagi.
Van Sagi's a good one. I think
I've seen him.
If you're looking beyond the top guys.
Yeah, he's a guy who plays like an NHLer already. You can kind of tell. Physically, that is. Lev Katzin, weird development path, but seems to be coming around. How do you view him? You go nuts on this. I just watched Katzin, so I have thoughts, but I want to know what you think about Lev Katzin, because I don't believe we've ever spoken about him, and I'm tainted by Jordan Millet's thoughts on him.
I too have heard Jordan Millet's thoughts on him. Lev Katzin is such a spaz out there on the ice. Like, there are moments where I watch him and I'm like, okay, like there's some good passing and there's a good decent shot. But like I'll never get it out of my head when he went in the penalty box for just like punching a guy in the head, basically. Immediately gets out of the penalty box and just goes back after that player without the puck and just takes the head off again and then goes and gets kicked out of the game. Like, he has that that switch where he just loses it. But like I think he's a decent enough player. Like, I'm not gonna be shocked when he gets drafted.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance that he goes really, really late. I think, like, I did a game of his, and if it's this whole thing with small players. If the bar's up here, you got to be really good.
Yeah.
And I felt that Katzin really skated himself into problems a lot. I think he didn't really have the escape speed under pressure that a lot of guys his size need. I admire the work rate. He certainly was trying, and he was certainly very skilled, and but he was getting his shots from the perimeter. He was teed up on a one-timer, I think, to score a goal in that game, which is great. He's got a wicked shot. You can't take that away from him. He's a very good offensive player, but in terms of like a complete 200-foot game and a good defensive effort that I think you can project to the NHL, I don't know if that's there right now. But yeah, I mean, he's another fun one, but him versus Ivan Fomin, I don't know. I probably go with the guy who might die, might die on the ice relative to the one who might score a goal. I don't know. Maybe I'm nuts. Probably. Someone asked about Ernest Kachorka, who is a superstar for the Dubai Mighty Camels. I don't know. He's not really my type. I'm more of a Mikhail Didenko guy, I think. Watch both Ryabkin USHL games. He put up points, but I don't get it. He's physical and his pace of play is slow. Doesn't look like he ever gets out of second gear. Tony, you mentioned that you watched Ivan Ryabkin recently, and so did I. Do you want to start this one off? Because this is a good one.
I'm going to try to keep this as nice as possible because I'm going to expose us a little bit, Will. We've said some things. And I think with Ryabkin, the pace just isn't there. He is physical. Like, he goes to the net, he crashes and bangs. Maybe he's a third liner. I don't think he's the player anyone thought he was going to be coming into the year. The playmaking, the smarts, it's all kind of still there, but man, has it not been what we thought coming off of last season, where I thought he was a contender for the top 5. Like, I genuinely did, and he has just not been it. And yeah, like I said, I've watched him at the USHL level now, and I'm just like, it's kind of the same thing in an environment that allows it to fester a little bit more and allows it to do its thing. And he's at least trying now, it seems, which is a plus. But man, it is still, you're just asking for so much more on every shift, I think.
I agree. I think it is very interesting. After I did watch both games he played with Muskegon before he got suspended. I saw the play that got him suspended, and like it's I don't like getting into the brains of hockey players, especially when I'm not on the ice and I'm not at all close to their level of play. But he is a player that strikes me as a guy who is very easily frustrated and plays frustrated and gets reckless. I saw him take a penalty that was completely unnecessary below the goal line. He what was it? He cross-checked a guy in the lower back and just dumped him into the boards from like
Yep.
2 feet out. And I'm going, you don't got to be doing that. Like, and maybe NHL teams look at that and go, oh, that's a side of this player we've never seen before. That's fun. But he sat in the box for 2 minutes. Then later in the game, away from the play, had nothing to do with what was going on. He gets tangled up with a guy and just throws him over his foot to the ice, right? Like another play, he flattened a guy on an offensive zone exit, like his offensive zone exit into the neutral zone against him. And I mean, the guy kind of did turn into the hit on Ryabkin, but Ryabkin didn't hit him shoulder first. He came arms first, and the arms were out. Like it's just stuff where I'm looking at him and I'm going, it's just not what I like to see for players. I mean, I could see an NHL team going at and looking at him and going, okay, maybe he's not that top level guy, but he's smart enough. He gets around the ice well enough, and he's more than physical enough to be a bottom six center in the NHL maybe one day. And you really get him to sort of work that pesty, aggressive role and do it with a little bit more caution. Maybe there's something there. I bumped him up a little bit after having seen him in the USHL, but yeah, it's still like when is he the best player on my list? I don't know, right? And then he's going to get drafted. Someone's going to pick him. And I just don't know when that point would be for me, at least for me.
No, I agree with you. Ryabkin is he's one of the toughest evaluations this year because in the back of my mind, I do still think that there is that player that we saw last year, just a smart tactical playmaker, like the guy that plays a level of hockey that really does start up top and everything kind of flows through that. And this year, it just hasn't quite been there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's been tricky. Maybe it works out, but yeah, it's tough. I don't know who's going to pull the trigger on that one, but I'll be very curious to find out. How do you feel about Haris Junskis, the Rune Naranda defenseman that was on Latvia? I actually noted him a few times during the tournament. I don't know if you saw much of him, but really mobile, good skating guy. But when I went and watched him with Rune Naranda, he was fine. You know, I don't really see like an NHL level guy, but you know, maybe a camp invite, see what he does.
Yeah.
That's kind of the level I saw him. I don't know if you noted him at all.
Yeah, I known him a couple of times. Saw him at the with Ryan Miranda, and I went, yeah, he's a decent enough defensive guy, and that's kind of where it lives and dies, like mobile enough. But like you said, I don't know if there's an NHL player there. I don't know if like I won't be shocked if he's a guy that goes over to Europe and plays in one of the better leagues over there and looks pretty decent.
Yep, I agree, 100%. Someone mentions that Caden Lindstrom just had another surgery on his back to clean up the discs. Yeah, I mean, that's messing with someone's back, right? Like that's where you kind of get, you know, if 25 years ago the concern was when you blow out your knee or something, I feel like we're seeing a lot of back problems becoming problematic for a lot of players. Like Nolan Patrick, I believe, was a lot of back problems and stuff like that, but I could be wrong. Anyway, tricky. Sorry to do this to any Blue Jackets fans. Do you think Ivan Demidov can be near a point per game player as a rookie next year? Is he your Calder, I'm assuming Calder Trophy favorite for next year as of now? I mean,
point per game seems aggressive.
Yeah, that's aggressive. Seems aggressive to me, but I'd love to see it, you know?
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Depends on who he's playing with. If he's playing with Patrick Laine or something and teeing up Patrick Laine all night, yeah, maybe I could see it, you know.
Was it today that he scored a goal like surrounded by four guys and just spun and threw a backhand top shelf?
He's so good. Like he's so good.
It's just
like, what are we doing here, right? Like, if only someone yelled and if only people yelled and screamed about how good he was last year. I don't know. Weird.
Crazy.
What are your general views on okay, we talked about Carter Bear a lot. What are your general views on Bear, O'Brien, and Kindle? I think we can skip Bear. Jake O'Brien, I brought up. I've liked him. I think he's a really interesting sort of 200-foot guy. But what are you seeing in a Jake O'Brien?
I love his playmaking, the creativity he has, the ability to kind of just use like these little delays to open up passing lanes and different things. I think he's a great facilitator of the puck, and then like you said, a good two-way guy. I really like Jake O'Brien. He was higher on my board than I really expected him to be, and I think he's going to be a player that goes higher than some people think. I think he's going to be a guy that a lot of people publicly have in the second round. And I won't be shocked if he goes in the first, because NHL teams seem to like a guy like O'Brien, who does have a good head on his shoulders, understands where to be defensively, and then does have that playmaking ability on the offensive end. And Benjamin Kindle, he's your boy. I've talked enough about how good his playmaking is, so I'll let you wax poetic about him.
He's really effing good at hockey. Like, that's really it. Like, he's just, in my view, he's like a master tactician. Yeah. And just stays ahead of the game, makes plays. He's never asleep. He is just always engaged. He's not the most physical guy, but he doesn't need to be. You know, he's not perfect, but good Lord, like I think that he just plays such a style of play that, like, if you like, to me, it's like if you don't get Michael Misa, a guy like Ben Kindle could fit that similar vibe not too much later than Michael Misa. Like, I'm not taking Kindle first, but I would, if I don't get Misa and I'm drafting 9, 10, 11, Ben Kindle is pretty high on my list there, because I think there's just so much to love that's based around the really important things, like how you see the ice, how you create passing options, how you cause turnovers, how you elevate the guys you play with, and all of those things. I think he does really, really well. Like, he's higher on my list than the first ranking, but I don't know, like the guys ahead of him, Carter Bear, Cullen Potter, Jackson Smith, I don't know if I could put him ahead of those guys right now, but I don't know. Like, we'll see. He's a heck of a player. Fun fact: Matt Savoy is third in rookie scoring in the AHL. Well, good for him. Do you think Cousins can be reborn on a new team, potentially the Wings? I mean, by default, yes, right? Like, if you leave the Sabres, it's been pretty much a universal track record that you figure your game out again. I don't know.
I think he can do it on the Sabres. Like,
that too.
This guy isn't too far removed from a 30-goal season. Like, he has the potential to be a very good player. So I think he can be a key piece on that Sabres team. But like I said, they need to figure out what it is that's oozing out of the walls. They need to get rid of the asbestos and put some good insulation up.
You're talking like a homeowner already. Holy smokes. Look at you go.
Yeah.
All right. Mertka projection. I actually just watched Radim Mertka today. I don't know. I see a middle pair, all situations dude. He gets around the ice well. He's strong on the puck. His passes are crisp and strong. I think he relies on his reach a little too much.
Yeah.
That I think can really burn him here and there, but you can work on that. Like, if he can defend with his feet a little bit more and get a little stronger, I think you could find a good middle pair, 200-foot defensive leaning guy. I think he's fine. I think the habits and the mobility is a little bit better with a guy like Fiddler for a similar type of sort of defensive leaning role with a bit of offense to him. But I like Mertka just fine. I think he's fine. What about you?
That's what I was just going to say. I was going to say, I think him and Fiddler are built in the same mold. I think with Mertka, the one thing I've always noticed with him is he seems to pivot and get into this backward skating pretty well. And then that's where the issue starts to happen, where the guy can catch up to him. I think he needs to get a little bit quicker moving backwards. But for the most part, I think he's a pretty solid, safe player. Does a lot of things well. And like I said, when you have a defensive defenseman, you need to have that requisite skill to be a capable puck mover. You don't need to be the guy that moves the puck on your pairing, but you need to be perfectly capable if they're really leaning on and forechecking the other guy.
Yeah, I agree. Will all four Djurgården boys go in the first 3 rounds? So that's Nilsson, Drott, Frondell, and Eklund, I'm assuming. I would say that first 3 rounds, I would say at least 3 of them.
Yeah.
Like if Eric Nilsson is a 4th-round pick or something, or Arvid Drutt, I think that's silly pants season. I think it's, I don't know. But I'll throw it over to you. But I think it's possible. It should happen. I think it should be the case, but who knows?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I think it should happen, but how many times have we seen a guy that should have gone in the second round,
Yes.
even if you weren't as favorable on him as say you or I are, end up going in the 4th or 5th round, and then they look solid and whatnot. So it's not going to be shocking if a guy like Drott goes in the 4th round or even the 5th round, but you're probably going to go, I really like that pick for Carolina.
Right. Yeah, probably, honestly, at this rate. This is a good one. I love this. Thoughts on Simas Ignatavicius? Yeah, I actually saw this guy play at his international tournament. So if anyone who doesn't know, Simas Ignatavicius is the next big thing out of Lithuania. He just played at his World Junior Tournament, Division 2A. Lithuania just won, so they're going to be in Division 2 1B next year. And he came away with 14 points in 5 games. I believe he is the most productive draft -1 player at that level at the under 20s ever. He plays in Switzerland. He is over a point a game at the under 20 level. He played 3 games in the 2nd division. I came away, I watched him play in this tournament because I wanted to see what he was capable of there, and it was hilarious. He popped a hat trick against China. I watched him play the game against the Netherlands, which I believe was the team that was relegated. It wasn't even close. Like, he is bigger, faster, more skilled, stronger, everything, more than everybody else. He should have been dominant there, but I liked him. Actually, he's from Memphis. That's interesting. But anyway,
I was just gonna say I want to know the story behind him being born in Memphis.
What's the deal there? Like, he's born in Memphis, but he's Lithuanian. He plays hockey in Switzerland. Very interesting. But yeah, I've seen him a little bit here and there. I watched a bit of him in the Swiss League because I was like, well, okay, a 2026 kid for the Swiss League from Lithuania, like, what's going on there? And yeah, for a big boy, you can skate, he's got skill, and then he just absolutely shredded his World Junior Tournament to bits and earned his team a promotion, and he'll be on the team for the next 2 seasons. So who knows where they go from there? Simas Ignatavicius. Is Jackson Smith the 2nd best defenseman in the draft? To me, he is on my list. He's number 2. Like, my number 3 is Cam Reed and Blake Fiddler and Radim Murtka, and I would take Jackson Smith over all of those guys.
Yeah. I think Matthew Schaefer is safely the first defenseman off the board. Yes. Jackson Smith is number 2, and then you do get into that group of Murtka, Fiddler, Reed. I have Lindgren in that group as well, but probably definitely at the end of that group for that guy.
Yeah. Cole McKinney, yay or nay? I actually did a game of Cole McKinney today, and I liked him. I honestly think that in a very simple but effective job, he could be quite good at it. Like, he's a good puck mover. He's got some strength on his feet. He's determined under pressure. Like, he brings a lot of translatable traits to the game. I don't know how much of a high-end player he'll be, but I was pleasantly surprised with what I saw against an NCAA team. And yeah, he's almost a point a game this year. I think he's a good player, and I don't know if he projects as more than like a 3rd or an okay 2nd-line center, maybe probably a 3rd-line guy, but he could be good at it. I don't know. Have you seen much of McKinney this season?
Yeah, I was going to say, McKinney strikes me as a guy that plays on your 3rd line, on your 2nd power play, as a guy that can kind of facilitate and move the puck a little bit. I don't know if he's ever going to be a true offensive guy, maybe a PK guy. He's kind of a bit player at the bottom of your lineup. I look at him and I go, yeah, you could fill that role.
Yeah, same. Bill Zonin, where would you take him versus where do you think he'll be taken? I think if Bill Zonin is there somewhere in the 20s, I would really start thinking about it. I have him ranked higher than that, but I think in the 20s is around where I'd start really seriously being like, okay, this is a good option. Where's he going to go? I think he could crawl his way into the 1st round. Like, I think it's possible. He's got size, he's got speed, he's got physicality, he's got production. Like, he just won't be at the under 18s, so maybe he won't get that bump. But I think it's possible. Do you maybe an early 2nd round pick? But if he's an early 2nd round pick, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think he's a late first, early second round guy. Have him a little higher. He's another guy that's moved up a little bit since my last ranking. I love Bill Zahn. I think he's tenacious. He plays with a ton of effort and speed, and not necessarily like the most technically skilled skater, I don't think, but he gets to where he needs to be. He's putting in the work. His feet don't stop moving, and I think that helps. And yeah, he does produce. He puts up a decent amount of points, but I think this is where I'm obligated to say the QMJHL is terrible, and there's very few players I would take from that draft, from that league.
There it is.
With that said, Bill Zonin is one of those guys, and he is Tony approved in the QMJHL.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad we could
Tony
find
Ferrari
some
approves this player.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's not
okay.
talk about some of the other Q guys.
Someone comments that 90% of hockey is jersey design and team name. That's true. Maybe what Buffalo needs to do to exercise their demons outside of get a couple of defensemen is just go with the black and gray and red and stick with it.
Yes.
It's pretty neat. It's a totally different change of pace. Try it. I don't know. What's the worst that could happen?
Goat head?
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't shoot. Oh,
I don't know.
AJ.
He was born when it was new, so he has like no recollection of
Anthony Jameson.
That's not my name. It's funnier. It's Alfredo Jacob.
I know what your real
Arnold-
name is. You don't get your real
Arnold-
name with that.
Arnold
take.
Frigoff. That's his real name.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I just don't like the black and red.
I'll say slurs to you. No, I
Oh,
won't.
boy.
I'm a good person.
Well, it was good. It was a good run. We had a good run, and I guess that'll be it for tonight. And we'll
We're
never see
late
you
enough
again.
into the show. Will,
Yeah,
come on. You say
that's
slurs
true.
all the time. Drop a couple.
This is the most unhinged we've ever
Well,
been. Holy.
No comment. Let's move on. I'm skipping David Phillips's question because it brings up the QMJHL ruining Peter Reynolds. I don't know.
Peter Reynolds, low-key, I will go on a QMJHL rant for this right now. Peter Reynolds was a guy I actually kind of liked in his draft year, and the QMJHL did ruin him. So I am with David Phillips on this one.
He's an elite U Sports player now, though, so that's fun.
Yeah, he's ripping it up in CSSHL or whatever it's called. Yeah, he's gonna be a great Dubai mighty.
I'm gonna bring him
Mighty
in.
Camel.
I'm gonna bring him in. He's gonna score 10 points a game, and we'll never lose ever again. That's what's gonna happen. Easy peasy. All right, let's move on. Will Horkoff has looked surprisingly good for Michigan. How much can he boost his stock in the next 5 months? I haven't seen him honestly, so I can't really comment. I don't know if you have.
I've not seen him since he's been with Michigan. He was pretty underwhelming with the NTDP.
Yes, I agree.
So,
but you know,
if he rips
not
it up,
calling the liar,
then,
not calling
then
him a
maybe.
liar. Yeah, not calling them a liar, but we'll see. Ray Bro is here. What up, dog? Show the Ottawa bucket. Well, of course I will.
Your garbage can.
Yeah, this is my new garbage can. It's it's got a Fig Newton wrapper in it. Yeah, it's weird because it's backwards in my video here. A Watto. But anyway, it's a good sized garbage can for my needs. It just happens to be a popcorn bucket I got at the Canadian Tire Center. I don't know. It's nothing against the Ottawa Senators. If it had a Buffalo Sabres logo on it or a Columbus Blue Jackets logo on it, I'd probably use it for the same purpose. But, you know, if the World Juniors were in Ottawa, so whoops.
Just as long as it didn't have a Toronto Maple Leaf, then we have a problem.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time. Maybe after this one breaks, I'll replace it with a Leafs one.
I will no longer be your producer.
Okay. Well. Yeah. Well. Someone mentioned that Carter Bear will be a Duck if they pick 4 through 7. Yes, on paper, I believe you. I agree, but considering how much Beckett Seneca came out of nowhere, like, who's going to be the guy?
Roger McQueen. They're going to take Roger McQueen.
Yeah, Roger McQueen probably, if he's not gone. If they pick 4 to 7, it's possible.
Humongous Beag screams Anaheim. That's
who's gonna be the guy that rockets up draft boards at the last minute. It's him.
Doesn't even have to be a rocket, like a guy who's on a rocket ship up the draft board. They like big.
Right. I don't know. Like Blake Fiddler. Is Blake Fiddler gonna go like 5th overall?
Oh yeah.
You know,
the
it's like I guess I see why.
Sabres.
Yeah, exactly. Am I the only one who still thinks Reese Hamilton could be a guy? I watched 2 games recently, and I still think there's something there as a bottom 4 puck mover. Potentially. I mean, I don't think he's not a thing. I don't have him ranked, but I think I've seen enough out of him where I could. But when is he the best player on my list? I have no idea. I don't think that happens. So at that
Yeah.
point, I kind of go, I don't know.
I was much higher on him earlier in the year. I thought there was something there. I thought his situation kind of hampered him, and then he got traded, and I think he's still kind of doing a lot of the same stuff. So he's just kind of fallen down and off my list, really.
Makes sense. Then David Phillips copy pasted the same question, but replaced Reese Hamilton with Ivan Remazovsky, which that's very on brand for David. Oh boy. Okay. So thoughts on Perman Shamuhamadov? Who's that? Shamuhamadov. Is that a real person?
I'm going to be honest with you. I have not seen this player.
Perman Shamuhamadov is a real person. A 5'9" defenseman, born February 15th, 2007. He played for the Turkmenistan junior team last season and had 1 goal in 3 games and finished +4. He had 1 goal against Thailand in a 7-2 win. So Perman Shamuhamadov, yeah, no. Although, wait, no, is this the one? No, I was thinking of someone on Kyrgyzstan. Sorry, but their leading scorer was a guy by the name of Iskenderhan. I'm telling you, these tournaments have some A+ hockey, A+ names, A+ vibes. Definitely got to get into it like me, you know, the one guy in the world who's this Iskender Durdiev led the team in scoring, and his elite prospects page has 120 views, and I have refreshed this page 3 times, so I'm 3 of those. So take that for what you will. Okay. Someone tags a different YouTube channel that I have never seen before, so I'll check it out. Thoughts on Wayne Glensky?
The one that asked the question. That's
yes. What in the hell is this? Wayne Glensky is
nice, Tony.
What is happening here? This is a real person. This can't be a real person. That's impossible. Anyway, Wayne Glensky does come up in Elite Prospects' database as a Central African Republic player. And
you've gone down such a rabbit hole that now people send you random ass players they can find.
Like Wayne Glensky, how do you even find that? Like, is there a story there with Wayne Glensky?
I mean, there's nothing. Even the 1 year they do have him on the Central African Republic U14 team, he has no stats, and it was pre-COVID. So,
oh, there's a YouTube channel about Wayne Glensky, or a YouTube video with 67,000 views from 4 years ago. Interesting. I don't know anything about Wayne Glensky. This is the first time learning about it. Now there seems to be. Oh my goodness, he's got an Instagram page, and one of the pictures is tagged from the location Poop Yucatan. People
one of the pictures is just little Wayne's face photoshopped on a King's Wayne Gretzky.
Oh God. Okay. Any of you watch Artyom Vilchinsky relatively recently? Ottawa will probably draft him in the 2nd round, but is there a chance that it could ever work? 2nd round? I'm thinking 1st.
I mean, is there a chance it could work?
Yeah.
Sure.
There's never not a chance. But I have not liked him when I've seen him. I don't know. He's huge, and he's huge. I don't know. Maybe, but I can't say it's impossible, but no. Everett Baldwin thoughts. Yeah, I like Everett Baldwin. I've seen a little bit of him playing prep school hockey. Obviously, he kind of skates circles around everybody there, but I will hold back my serious Everett Baldwin thoughts from now until he plays in the USHL again. I thought he played really well in those games. He's not perfect. Definitely some defensive holes in his game, but when he gets moving in a straight line, he might be one of the fastest defensemen in the draft this year. Like, he's insane. I don't know. Have you seen much of him?
I've seen.
Or are you deep in the Wayne Glensky? Are you just down the Wayne Glensky rabbit hole?
I was just sent a video of Wayne Glensky. And I have a feeling the person also sent it to you, Will. So
Was it Jordan who sent you?
it was Jordan.
Oh, yes, he did
Um,
send me the same video.
And I was not
Wait.
expecting it to be.
Wayne Glensky, ladies and gentlemen, is what it says on the title. Anyway, whatever. Everett Baldwin, or are we just completely lost for the rest of the show? And
Everett Baldwin is good. He's fine. I've seen him a few times. Not someone I have necessarily ranked or high on my list at all.
got it. All right, where do we go here? Jordan Carter Yakimchuk for Calder, maybe.
I was laughing at solid mid.
Oh, that's what you were laughing at. Okay.
Yeah.
Watched both ASU versus North Dakota games. Cullen Potter is quick and plays at pace. How much will his size affect his stock, and why isn't there more mainstream hype for him? I can't answer the second part of that question. I don't know. The first part of the question, I don't think it will affect his stock much or projection much. He's not that small. Like he's what, 5'10", I think. Anyway, but I have not seen the games against North Dakota. I will though, because it's about time.
My thing with Cullen Potter is I think he's an absolutely fantastic player, but because he's not scoring at the rate of a Celebrini, of a Fantilli, of some of these guys that we've seen recently in the NCAA, I don't think he's getting the love. I think sometimes he also plays out west, plays for ASU.
Yeah.
So I think there's some bias away from that as well. I mean, if you want to watch a team that has sweet jerseys, 90% of hockey is jerseys. ASU has some pretty cool jerseys.
They're not as cool as the Dubai Mighty Camels.
No, they're not as cool as Dubai Mighty Camels.
Thank you.
I think Cullen Potter's really, really good. Like he's a top 10 talent in this draft class. I think he's a guy that should be ranked higher by most people, but I think there are people that I have heard that people around hockey didn't like the fact that he went to the NCAA this year.
I've heard the same thing.
So I think that partially has affected some of his stock and some of his mainstream media perspective, but
right,
I think he's a fantastic player. Like he's got so much in his game.
Yeah, I mean, and so they just commented the NCHC is heavy playing, and so half a point a game is pretty impressive. Yes, I mean we love him. Like again, it's the same thought experiment that I've said this a few times now. It's like instead of Logan Cooley on the NTDP, put him on ASU and centering the second line. Like, does Logan Cooley go a point a game or whatever in the NCAA at that age? Probably not. I don't know. He might look physically outmatched. He might this and this and this, but boy, you probably would still see quite a lot of upside there. And with Potter, yeah, I mean, hey, look, people can keep sleeping on him forever for all I care. Like, go nuts. Like, maybe they won't even invite him to the U18s if they're that upset at him. And if that's the case, then by all means, but he's really good. We're big fans. Anything else? Scouts have differing views on Misa. I'm assuming Michael. Some think he's a detailed two-way center. Some think he's a one-dimensional goal-scoring winger. Which is more accurate? He is certainly not a one-dimensional goal-scoring winger. That is patently false. I am certain of that. Detailed two-way center? Yeah, that is what I think he is. I think he's a guy who is extremely good at pretty much everything. That's my view of him. Yeah.
I just watched a game of him today, and first thing I wrote down was like the ultimate tactician. Just understands how to do these little things in big moments that make the flashy things he does even better when you watch him the second time. I think I sent you a goal earlier today from one of his recent games where he just kind of gets the puck high in the zone. And this came after a few times where he swung by the net and tried to deflect pucks or get a rebound and different things. And then he gets a puck high in the zone, attacks the middle of the ice, just kind of extends his arms out, holds the puck out from him just outside the reach of a defenseman to pass it around them, and then immediately jumps in behind them for an opportunity to score a goal on just a beautiful little tap in front. Like these little detailed things that he does, I think are really impressive. And for me, I think he has the skill. His pace is just amped up so much this year. I think the injury really hampered him last year. And I mean, what can you say? The guy's scoring at basically a goal a game. He's putting up almost 2 points a game. this kid's been absolutely fantastic. For me, like I said, after watching him and Haggins and Schaefer earlier today, for I don't even know how many times this year between the three of them, he kind of separates himself as the first overall pick for me. I don't know if he's there for you necessarily, Will, but this kid is a stud, just all around stud, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's sick. Like he's just so. I just think he's like, the way I see it is he is one of those players that, you know, sometimes I'm not a huge fan of guys who are good at a lot of things and maybe nothing is the standout quality, but he's like excellent at a lot of things. And the guy that he really, like, when I think about an NHL player who's like excellent at everything and, you know, may not be like the highlight reel skill guy or the blow a hockey puck through the back of the net shooter, or, you know, the thunderous body checker that throws a guy into the bench. He's not that, but you don't really care. Like I keep thinking like Sidney Crosby, where it's like you there's nothing really that you can do. You know, I'm not saying he's Sidney Crosby, but like in terms of style of play, where it's like there's just not much, you know, to poke holes in, and there's not much you can do to really beat him. Like he'll find a way to strip the puck off of you. He'll find a way to put a puck through your legs. He'll find a way to find a teammate. He'll find a way to set up a dangerous, threatening play in the offensive zone. He can score himself. He's sick. So I don't know, a one-dimensional goal scorer. Like think that at your peril, I think, in my opinion. All right. Anything else? Everybody's saying they're disappointed in me not knowing who Wayne Glinski is. Well, now I know, apparently. Someone mentions Damian Zhilkin. I think that's Danny's brother. I have barely seen him. I can't really give you a good answer on that.
Yeah.
Is Jackson Lacombe for real? Maybe that's a guy we take a look at for the next show, because I have not. Someone asked about him on Monday, and I didn't have a very good answer, and I still don't have a very good answer. So maybe we'll jot that down as a watch list guy for the next show.
You can do that.
Okay, and the last question of the day is about Gustav Hillstrom, who, well, we talked about him earlier in the show. Is a guy that I recently took my first detailed look at, and I loved him. I think he's a really good 200-foot center that, you know, definitely just is very efficient and quite good. So put him on my list pretty high, not like first round high, but pretty darn good. I watched him in the SHL. He didn't look out of place there, and I think he scored a goal in that game too, which was kind of nice. On that note, we're going to call it a night. Tony, any final thoughts, any parting words, anything you want to plug, anybody you want to apologize to before you get canceled? What?
I still can't believe you said you'd say slurs to me.
It was a joke, guys. I didn't say slurs. I don't say slurs. I'm a good person. With that said, you can find most of my at thehockeynews.com. This week I'll be coming out with a sour ranking looking at the worst teams in the NHL and their race for the first overall pick, as well as a Calder Trophy tracker looking at the league's best rookies and Lane Hudson and Macklin Celebrini and all those guys. Hopefully Game Tape gets going back again. I've got a few coals in the fire of some pretty big name players, so we should be getting back on that train as well. And then the final thing I will say is the Ravens beat up on the Steelers this weekend, and that was fun for me.
Thank God. The Steelers are just such an eyesore to watch.
And with that said, this weekend it will be fun to hopefully see a repeat of the 35 beatdown where the Ravens show Josh Allen is a fraud and he should not win MVP. And he's a big goofy loser.
Fake news.
I get to sit this one out. I have no horse in this fight.
Fake news.
I don't even know what a football looks like.
Yeah, that's because you watch Canadian football like a chump.
I don't watch Canadian football. I don't watch Canadian football. I like the rules of the Canadian football game more than the American.
You're just a horrible person then.
Okay. What are you going to do about it?
He's going to say slurs.
I didn't want to say it, but I was thinking it.
Well, I guess on that note, that's about a good time to end it. Thankfully, we'll put this one out of its misery. Go Mighty Camels, go. Again, as usual, brought to you by Fanatics. Use the link in our description box or in the chat. and we'll get a kickback on anything you buy in the store. We're also brought to you by Puck Preps Hockey, where you get all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs over there. A subscription definitely helps us all out a lot. And you can also get a subscription over at Scouching.ca, where you'll get access to a Discord server, as well as plenty of data tools and visualization fun stuff that will be updated in the near future. There's just all kinds of stuff you can check out at Scouching.ca. So, fellas, thanks for joining me again. Tony, way to keep a lid on things. Thanks very much. And we'll see you, at least AJ, I'll see you Monday, you know? And
Thursday?
Oh, yeah, it's Monday today. Today is Monday.
We made a mistake earlier in the show, too.
What is happening? Okay, Thursday. We'll see you Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, sir.
Oh, my God.
And go Leafs go, and go Bills go. Screw you, Tony. I'm going to win.